What's up, everybody? I'm Kevin Stewart, and today I'm going to play some American Truck Simulator. Been a while since I played the game. 79, I think. Peterbilt 389. We're probably wondering that probably also Oklahoma City. I know it's not in the base game or any DLCs. It's a mod. I think it got Ontario and BC. Yeah, so some reason I can't get to Ontario because there's Roadster, New York, and right over here that would close to be Buffalo, right here near the Interstate 90. And right because we could be Niagara Falls. Like even if we want to drive into Canada from or Ontario from like even Sault Ste. Marie, I think I can. There's Sault Ste. Marie. Freeway.
Let's do this. Keep left, and then turn left. Turn left. Recompute. Go straight on. Go straight on.
This programming is sponsored by UT Austin's McCombs School of Business, offering the Texas McCombs MBA in Houston. Classes held in person on alternating weekends. Campus visit February 11th. Registration available at texasmba.com. Make it here.
They could make history at tonight's Grammy Awards. Here's Mondelise Del Barco reports on the 65th annual ceremony taking place in Los Angeles.
Beyonce has 9 Grammy nominations, one for her song Be Alive from the film King Richard.
So when we will have pride.
The other nominations are for songs from Renaissance, which is up for Album of the Year.
You won't break my soul. You won't break my soul.
If she wins at least 4, Beyonce will become the artist with the most Grammys ever. For the first time, the ceremony will honor poetry albums and video game soundtracks and 50 years of hip-hop. Mondelise Del Barco, NPR News.
At the weekend box office, after 7 weeks in the top spot, Avatar: The Way of Water was knocked out of the lead as the thriller Knock at the Cabin opened with an estimated $14 million in ticket sales. That movie had a reported production budget of just $20 million. This is NPR News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Annie E. Casey Foundation, using research and evidence to develop solutions that help families and communities create a brighter future for young people. More information is available at aecf.org.
I just hope there's
Life is complicated enough. Why worry about what to do with that extra car? Skip the cost of maintenance, registration, insurance, storage, or even selling it to someone. To Houston Public Media. Not only will you help sustain the PBS, NPR, and local programming you love, but you could qualify for a nice tax deduction. We'll handle all the details. Just go to houstonpublicmedia.org/vehicle, fill out the form, and we'll take it from there.
This is All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Michelle Martin. We're going to start with the dramatic confrontation between the U.S. and China over that giant balloon discovered floating at high altitude over the U.S. last week. If you recall, China says it was just a weather balloon inadvertently blown off course. The Biden administration says China was using it for surveillance and shot it down yesterday. And the administration canceled, or rather postponed, a planned visit to Beijing by the U.S. Secretary of State. Earlier today, Beijing criticized the shoot-down, calling it an overreaction. The Chinese Foreign Ministry said Beijing, quote, reserves the right to make further responses if necessary, unquote. We're going to hear now from Senator Michael Bennet, a member of the Senate Intelligence Committee. He's a Democrat from Colorado, and he's with us now. Senator Bennet, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, Michelle.
Do you think China might actually retaliate in some way?
Well, I think they might try to find some way to retaliate, but I think the idea that they said this is an overreaction is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, imagine what the Chinese would have done if this had been an American balloon wandering over mainland China. So I think the Biden administration has done the appropriate thing, and we'll have to see if they retaliate.
Can I briefly ask you about the mission itself? As you've no doubt seen, some of your Republican colleagues are saying the administration waited too long. They should have acted right away. Politics aside, there is an argument that by waiting to shoot down the balloon until it was over the ocean, the U.S. may have undermined its chances of finding out what the intelligence mechanisms on the payload actually were. Is that fair?
I think putting politics aside, all of us are going to have a responsibility to look and see what the intelligence shows us. I'm on the Intelligence Committee, and I'm looking forward, hopefully, to being briefed this week about what our folks have found. I have no doubt that the intelligence community, along with DOD, had a point of view about what the optimal recovery would look like for the United States. I'm sure they shared that with the president. I'd be very surprised if he didn't act in accordance with that. So let's see what the intelligence tells us.
So as you know, the Secretary of State, quote-unquote, indefinitely postponed his trip to China this week. Would it be fair to say that one reason the administration postponed the trip, besides making a statement of disapproval, was that they didn't want him and his delegation on China's territory knowing they were going to shoot down the balloon? But having said all that, isn't the time to talk when you're having a serious disagreement?
I think that pulling this down was exactly the right thing to do. And I'm glad Tony Blinken had been planning on going there. I think it's important for us to continue to have high-level discussions with the Chinese. But this this affair with the balloon is just another reckless and unacceptable move by China. I think the administration needs to be very clear that this is absolutely unacceptable, and one way of doing it is by pulling down our diplomatic engagement. We can obviously put it back up later when tempers have cooled.
So let's turn to TikTok, because that's why we initially reached out to you. Actually called you earlier in the week before this whole thing, surfaced. This week, you joined calls from other lawmakers to ban it from the Apple and the Google app stores. TikTok has more than 100 million users in the U.S. and it's owned by China, as we said. What worries you the most about TikTok?
Well, what worries me the most about TikTok is that over 100 million Americans are using it, 80 minutes or 82 minutes a day. That's roughly 3 hours a week. And the obligations of TikTok's parent company, ByteDance, under Chinese law requires it at a moment's notice when Beijing asks for it, demands it, to share any data that it has acquired on the site. And I think that could force TikTok to surrender sensitive data from Americans, tweak its algorithm to advance the interests of the Chinese Communist Party, and I think that's bad for the United States. China is pursuing a China First policy by any means necessary, licit or illicit. And the question for the United States, I think, whether it's about TikTok or anything else, is whether we're content to be collateral damage. And I think instead we should be offering a compelling alternative to the Chinese model. And there's not a reason for us to be allowing Beijing to broadcast TikTok to a third of our population, or our entire population.
So
think about. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, in advance of our conversation with you, we called TikTok because you made your point of view on this public earlier. We talked to Michael Beckerman. He's vice president of public policy at TikTok, and I'll just play what he said to us about the user data issue.
We've said time and time again that we would not share Americans' user data with the Chinese government. We have to comply with U.S. law. There has been examples for other companies where Americans' user data has been taken and shared with foreign governments. I mean, these things have happened with other companies and been proven. This has not come up with us.
I presume they've made this argument to you and other lawmakers as well. Why don't you buy that?
I just think, there's no reason at all that we should believe that statement when we know that ByteDance is subject to Chinese law that tells that parent company of TikTok that it has to surrender whatever data it asks for. And I'd rather we be safe than sorry.
And they say that they have tightened their security protocols. He says that Americans' data would be stored securely in the U.S. with access protocols that are tighter than any existing app or tech company at the moment. He says that they're working on this, particularly in Texas. A number of states have already moved to ban TikTok from, say, public employees' phones, etc. I presume they've shared this information with you as well? You don't buy it?
Well, there's a reason this is being banned by public employees' phones, from the federal government, state governments all over across the country. And I think it's because people have been briefed on the same things that we've seen on the intelligence community, which is that
that's intent on using their oversight authority to the fullest. So while the address is technically to Congress, it is also a chance to speak directly to the American people, and for that matter to the world. it still does. Does the event still have an impact as a television event and as a communications tool? We called NPR media correspondent David Folkenflik for his take. David, welcome. Thanks so much for joining us once again.
Pleasure.
So just to set the history here, the president is required to deliver a report to Congress, but he doesn't have to give a speech. He could just send a letter.
Yep.
And actually, presidents did that for years until Woodrow Wilson personally appeared before Congress in 1913, and then Franklin Roosevelt adopted that practice, and since then it's become a tradition for the president to actually show up in person and deliver a speech. So is this a big deal? I mean, is this something that a lot of people watch?
Yeah, it's the biggest night for the president in terms of, on an ordinary given year, talking to the public, talking to the American people. You can say that it's not all that it once was, and we can get into that, but, 38 million Americans watched it last year on television. That was not really all of them who saw elements of it on subsequent news reports, radio reports, excerpted on podcasts or YouTube presentations or on social media.
When you say that it isn't what it was, tell me what you mean by that.
I looked back 3 decades ago to Bill Clinton's first State of the Union address, and Clinton got almost twice of the audience that Joe Biden got last year. So that tells you that there is a real winnowing of what we think of as the conventional linear television audience that is real-time television audience. And yet, I do think that there's this echo effect and the ability to create viral moments depending on the skill of the rhetoric and the president delivering it and the way in which they construct the argument they're making to the American people.
President Biden isn't, how can I put this, is not necessarily known for his abilities in this area. He's gaffe prone. I don't think it's a political statement to say that. He's prone to misspeaking. I don't know how significant that is. I think maybe we'll find out. But what are you looking for as you evaluate this event?
Right, the State of the Union kind of makes critics of us all, right? It's oftentimes a question of looking at the performance. Joe Biden is, as you say, often gaffe-prone, has been for decades. He has struggled with a stutter that makes it at times, a real challenge for him to surmount certain words, and he has to use others to get through it. He's talked in sometimes kind of in a very heartfelt and eloquent way about that challenge for himself. He needs to show the country that he has a coherent worldview at a time where, we are funding the Ukraine battle against the Russian invasion.
A new route. Go straight on.
I'm on your back.
Send away for a priceless gift. One not subtle, one not on the list. Send away for a perfect world.
This programming is sponsored by Central Market, celebrating Valentine's with chef-prepared meals for two, customized floral arrangements, bean-to-bar chocolate, and heart-shaped pot de creme. More at centralmarket.com.
In Port-au-Prince, and late last year, he was the one behind the fuel blockade that basically paralyzed Port-au-Prince for 2 months. And
go straight on.
You know, the way he pitches himself to the world now is basically this revolutionary. He tries to show himself as like someone that's advocating for the people against a corrupt government and a corrupt system, but, you know, just spending time with him. So much of what he told us was just, you know, heavily spun and very clearly trying to project something that wasn't real. For instance, you know, we were surrounded when we interviewed him by men with machine guns and masks, and we were not allowed to film any of it. All he would let us film was him showing off the good he's done for this neighborhood where he's accused of perpetrating a massacre.
How do people, like, are kids going to school every day? How do people get groceries, their basic needs met? I mean, are the banks open? How are people getting their basic needs met?
It really, truly depends. I've talked to many parents there that kind of have stopped sending their kids to school. We were there when there was a big protest by rebel police officers protesting gang killings of police, which have been mounting in numbers and quite grisly. And that just shut down the entire country for 2 days. Markets were closed, banks were closed, everything was closed. So sometimes you're able to get things, sometimes you're able to send your kids to school, sometimes it's just impossible. And if you think about it, you know, it doesn't even just extend to markets. We were in hospitals in the gang blockade a few months ago. You know, people couldn't get basic medical services because it was just too dangerous to walk out on the streets.
The police protests that shut down the country for 2 days, you described them in an article as rebel police officers. So how is law enforcement functioning in this environment?
You know, it's really not.
Go straight on.
The police force is incredibly depleted, and in the past few months you've seen a growing level of targetings of police officers. The protests this past few weeks were due to these grisly killings of 6 police officers. Following their killing, the gangs mutilated their body. There were really horrifying videos of it, and you have this group that is kind of like a confusing mix of active police officers, inactive police officers, and some even say there may be gang members mixed in. But it's a group that is basically demanding that these grisly killings of police stop, and that, you know, if you talk to police officers, they just want more supplies and reinforcements to, you know, take on the gangs in the country. And right now, they just don't have that.
So before we let you go, in your reporting you talk about how one of the police officers' family members are trying to navigate this kind of horrific situation. They're waiting to see if they'll be approved for a visa to travel to the U.S. Can you just what does their story tell us?
I spoke to one officer, the wife of an officer, who was disappeared in a recent attack. And they are scared now. They want to leave Haiti because they seem to assume, you know, he was killed, and their husband spent years fighting these gangs, and feel that they could get targeted too. They a few years ago applied to try and get a visa and get out of Haiti, and were never approved for anything. And now they're just kind of in limbo, like a lot of Haitians. They want to leave but have no way to do it. You know, it's an island.
Megan Janetsky is the Cuba and Caribbean correspondent for the Associated Press. She was recently in Haiti reporting on the growing influence of the gangs there. Megan Janetsky, thanks so much for talking to us and sharing this reporting with us.
Thank you.
We're going to seek additional perspective on this story now from a former U.S. ambassador to Haiti, Pamela Wright. She served there from 2012 to 2015. She's been arguing for some time now that Haiti needs an international force to quell the violence and help bring back stability. Ambassador White, welcome back to the program. Thanks for joining us once again.
Thank you so much for having me.
We last spoke with you in October after you testified before the House Foreign Affairs Committee. You argued then that Haiti needed help to deal with the spiraling situation, and you called then for boots on the ground. And after hearing our conversation with AP reporter Megan Janetsky, I can imagine that only reinforces your view.
Everything she had to say just points to the fact that we have got to do something. It just makes me so angry that for months and months and months, reality of what's going on in Haiti has been there for all to see, and yet no action. What are we going to do? One of the senior diplomats said, well, we'll wait till it gets worse. Worse? How can it get much worse? There's 5 million people nearing starvation. Somewhere between 60 and 80, 90% of Port-au-Prince is run over by gangs. 20% of the kids are not getting enough to eat day in and day out right now as we speak. I mean, it can't get worse. It is worse. And to not do anything quickly and concretely, in my opinion, is just plain criminal.
The UN Secretary General has also said, and the international force is needed, but there are few takers so far, as you were just alluding to.
Yeah.
Jamaica's Prime Minister recently announced that he would be willing to send soldiers and police officers to Haiti, but what does a strategic intervention look like?
We've got to have a transitional group. And that transitional group, in my opinion, should not involve anyone who's had anything to do with politics or gangs in the last 5 years in Haiti. We've got to have somebody that's totally above any suspicion of corruption. We need a high level group that no one can deny are the experts in this area to go down there and have a solid, big presence and come up with a transition plan that we can get Haiti on some kind of strategic plan to go forward. And the part of that plan obviously is going to have to be security. If Jamaica is the only one willing to come to the front, let's get them over there. If that's what we can. But we've got to get them everything else that they need. We need to start recruiting immediately for more police, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And are there bad guys in the police force? There are, yes. And we need to get them out. When I was there as ambassador, we had NYPD policemen and we had Miami policemen down there inserted into the Haitian police force, and they were fantastic because they were mentors, they were overseers, they made sure that the special teams were trained, they went with them on operations. We can do this again, but we can't do nothing.
If you know anything about the history of the country, you can certainly make a moral argument.
Yes.
But what is the geopolitical argument? What is the national security argument? What is your most persuasive argument here?
Well, they're leaving. The schools aren't functioning, the banks aren't functioning, the clinics aren't functioning. You know what's functioning? The passport office. 2 days ago there was a massive outbreak of violence in front of the passport office, and people are desperate to get a passport because this new ruling by the Biden administration says that if you can find somebody in the United States that has a means to support you and you have a valid Haitian passport, then we'll consider letting you get into the States legally. And so, they're fighting, they're desperate to get that passport. They're literally, crawling all over each other to get into the office. And that's caused by they need to get out of there. I've never liked this argument. I think we should be doing something in Haiti because we're the United States of America and we have a long history of being involved in that country for good and for bad often. But do something because we can, and we're the country that stands for doing, helping countries that need us out. But if you don't like that argument, if you want to go to the national security argument, okay, I can go there. There's going to be tens of thousands like you've never seen, getting into any rickety boat whatsoever or anything else that they can put 2 feet on, and they're going to be on our shores, and it's going to be a political problem for the Biden administration, and it's going to be a national security problem. You've got to do something. And by the way, the people that say that the Haitian people don't want an intervention force, blah, blah, blah. Just March 1st, there was some group called the Diagnostic Development Group issued a really well-done study that they had a wonderful cross-section of the population. They have a database of about 5,000 people that they use. In normal times they go door to door, but this time they went phone by phone. They use phone calls, and 69% of the Haitian people said we need an intervention now. This is a brand new study. It really needs to be listened to. 71% of the Haitian National Police cannot control the gangs. 64% of them said that the gangs are taking over more and more and more every single day. You've got to listen to the voice of the people. And I think if we had this top-notch, high-powered mediation group, that they could use the Diagnostic Development Group to go out and get the voice of the Haitian people unfiltered through their networks. And that would be a huge plus towards any plan going forward.
So before we let you go, according to previous reporting by NPR, Prime Minister Henry has called for a new round of elections with the aim of swearing in a new government by early next year. Is that even possible?
I mean, I have tons of friends in Haiti, and I mean, I talk to them all the time.
You listen to me? Unplug this. 'Cause I'm about to unload. Pump up the volume. Pop hard enough for you. HeartRadio.com.
I'll find a new way.
Used to walk among your midst, a law-abiding scientist. It came alive.
In the Navajo Nation. From here to Window Rock, Arizona is about 7 hours, so that's how far it is. But It's quite a ways down there.
She first attended one of the government-run boarding schools in the 1950s at just 6 years old.
I fought to live each day, whatever I need to be able to make it through. And I have scars in my heart.
Radio, man. Oh, hi. Oh, I need to find a fucking button to turn on my fucking light poles. Here. Yeah, go to sleep, you bastard.
Turn left. How does fucking people get the fucking
how they fucking fly. Cover the fucking clock off. That will fucking ruin your day. But I ain't fucking starting if I grab your fucking ass, buddy. Okay, if you like this, like, subscribe, comment below, and peace.